I recently went on kind of a voyage of discovery on in terms of coding, where I had a problem in one of my multi-year Opus Magnum programs that I've been working on, and I'm up to version, like 263. And essentially the problem was I had a string that looked like the blue string above, where I had a C colon or whatever drive letter colon and a whole ton of directories. And the next to the last directory was a data directory, and the last directory was a directory under the data directory that was a log directory that kept track of changes in the data directory. And then I had an actual log file name. And what I wanted to get from this string was just this part of the string up to the data directory, because I want to concatenate a couple other files I wanted to work with that were on the data directory level. And since the problem was to get just the data directory, and I just done a video on converting strings to stacks, actually initially converting strings to arrays and then changing the array into a stack and then popping members off the stack. I thought, I'll convert this string to an array using a split command with the slashes between the subdirectories as the delimiter for the split. And I'll put this in a string array variable called prongs. And then I'll put the prongs into a definition for a stack, which will actually reverse all the prongs. In other words, this will be the first item, the log file.txt. Log directory will be the second item, data dir will be the third item, and so on. And then I'll do a couple pops. The first pop will get the file name, and the second pop will get the log directory. And then I'll do a join on the stack converted back to an array, and that'll produce this result. But there were a couple problems with it. For one thing, when I say the stack converted to an array, it converts it back to an array, but it doesn't reverse the order the way it did going the other way. In other words, I reversed the order of the prongs when I made it into a stack, but when I call the to array, everything is still reversed. The first directory, the first item is data dir, the second item is dir 5, the third item is dir 4. So when I put these back together, it'll be totally reversed. This C colon will be at the end of the string instead of the beginning of the string. So the aspect to array didn't work, and also the string.join didn't work, because I've been conditioned by PHP where I was using explode and implode, where they're both 2-parameter calls. And in fact, the join is a 4-parameter call. It looks like this below, where you have the delimiter, you have the array, then you have a starting point in the array, which 0 is the first element, and then you have a number of items in the array, which is a length. And at first I said, why do you have all this in the join? What do you need that for? You could just have a join like in PHP. So the two problems, the array not getting reversed back to the right order, and the join taking 4 parameters, resulted in these 2 lines of code, where I daisy chained the 2 calls together. First I had a stack name dot reverse, and then I had a dot to array, and that got the result I wanted. That indeed had an array of elements that were in the right order. And then I did the join with the extended definition, which was delimiter, array name, starting element, and length. And this got the result I wanted. This produced the string that just had up to the data dir, so I could start concatenating with file names and just work with the data directory level. But then I looked at this elaborate code and I said, wait a minute, all I have to do is have the first line and then the last line, and instead of specifying, I still specify 0 as the first element, but I specify the length as being the length minus 2, and that would automatically remove the last 2 elements. So instead of having 7 lines, I just have 2 lines of code. So this was the function I ended up with, the get main directory from log file, where I'm passed the fully qualified log file name, and I convert this to an array with the split command using the slash as the delimiters, and then all I do is a string join with the same delimiter, the array. I started the first member, but I used the length minus 2, and then I return this to the main program, and that results in code that if we compile and run this, see, here's the fully qualified log name, here's the main directory name, and here's the main data file name concatenated with a file I want to manipulate that's on the data directory level. So I now have a 2-line solution instead of the original 7-line solution. And since I don't think for myself much, this inspired me to think of a series of quotes. The first is, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And another way of saying that is, simplicity is one of the hardest things to achieve. And this is one of the favorite quotes of Steve Jobs. If you read that huge biography of Steve Jobs that came out shortly after he died, he would actually build an entire computer. He and his team would build an entire computer. They'd design every circuit, and they'd write all the firmware code and all the operating system code. And it'd be a tremendous effort. It would take them months and months working 18-hour days. And then he'd throw out the whole thing. And he says, based on what we've learned, let's just start over from scratch and do this again. You know, let's get the 2 lines of code from the 7 lines of code. And the second quote I thought of was Rod Serling, who said, incompetence is the road to competence. And then I thought of 2 lines from CSI. One is, I'm often wrong, it's how I eventually get to be right. And the other one is, you're confused, it's the best place for a scientist to be. And then after thinking of all these quotes, I thought of the best quote of all, which is, if you have enough stopped phrases, you never have to think, which covers the whole process of thinking of these quotes. And that was from my dad, who was extremely intelligent and is extremely missed. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and learned a lot, at least learned some new quotes. And I'll see you in the next video, and until then, remember to focus and learn a lot.